Did you know that Roe versus Wade was argued twice before the United States Supreme Court? Did you know the story of Roe v. Wade is wrapped up in conspiracy? I'm Mark Harrington, and you've tuned in to Activist Radio, The Mark Harrington Show. The Mark Harrington Show is brought to you by Created Equal, and you can find out more by going to createdequal.org. And on today's program, we're going to be discussing the new film entitled Roe v. Wade. And we're going to be doing that with actor and producer Nick Loeb. But before we do, I want to play a bit of the movie trailer. So go ahead and play that clip.
We will hear arguments in Roe against Wade. You may proceed.
If you really want to know how abortion became legal in our country, I will tell you the true story.
Dr. Mildred Jefferson, would you like to head up a Right to Life group that I'm starting?
Dr. Bernard Nathanson's clinics are performing 1,000 abortions per week. That's why I'm taking up the fight.
I wanted to get abortion legalized across the country.
We're looking for a pregnant girl to challenge the abortion laws.
We'll give her a pseudonym. Call her Jane Roe.
It's genius. That way no one will ever know about her past.
First, they came after the Jews, and then they came after the mentally deficient. We did nothing. And now they're coming after the unborn. And so you're gonna do nothing?
Robert.
All right. So my guest today is Nick Loeb. He's an actor and a producer, and he produced this movie, Roe versus Wade. Nick, thanks for being on the program.
Mark, thank you so much for having me.
All right, Nick. So listen, I've been following this for a long time. I've seen the movie. We are actually, as an organization, going to watch the movie tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Hopefully, as a group. And so I've been following this for a long, long time. And first of all, I just want to ask you a couple questions. When we talk about Roe versus Wade, it's kind of everybody's heard of it. People know some about it. They know maybe a little bit about it, but a lot of people have heard of it. What inspired you to make a movie about Roe versus Wade, now almost 50 years past when the U.S. Supreme Court handed down
Yeah, it's interesting that you say a couple of things I want to address before I answer that. Number one, I like to say Roe v. Wade is the case that everyone has heard about, but nobody knows anything about. And when you say literally, I would say 99% of Americans don't know one thing about Roe. The only thing they know is it legalized abortion in America. And that's it. And that was the only thing I knew. And so when the movie idea was brought to me, I've been in the film business for a long time. I literally I couldn't believe that nobody had really made a real feature film about the entire case of how it got there, how it was decided. But funnily enough, my initial reaction when pitched the idea was to my friend, I say, I'm pro-life. I mean, why would I do a pro-choice movie? Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, you don't know this real story. And I think everybody thinks when they hear of Roe v. Wade, it's a pro-choice story. And when he started to explain, did you know that this happened and this kind of lies and manipulation? And it sort of intrigued me. And I said, well, maybe, I always thought maybe why didn't Hollywood make the movie? Maybe it was boring. But then I started to read and research. And it was fascinating. I mean, there were so many things that, we weren't even able to put fit into 2 hours that would blow your mind. I mean, this really should have been like a mini series or a limited series with the amount of conspiracy and manipulation and like Oliver Stone-esque, assassinations and like it gets deep. And so it deserved a lot more than what we were able to get it, but this was the only platform we could get it done on.
My guest today is Nick Loeb. He's the producer of Roe v. Wade, the movie. And folks, this is going to be available here on April 2nd to the public, but you can pre-order now by going to iTunes and basically any of or Amazon, I believe. And Nick, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is where people can get it. But it will be available to the public on April 2nd. You can pre-order right now. That's Roe v. Wade, the movie. Nick, when you talk about Roe versus Wade, I mean, as I said before, you're right. People know very little about it. They think they know everything about it. but there are some things in the movie that you bring forward that had never been brought forward before. Could you name one or two of those?
Sure, and I think it's interesting because most of the things that have been out there about Roe v. Wade have all been documentaries. I mean, there's been documentaries on both sides, on the left and the right. I mean, this is the first time anyone's really tackled making a sort of a feature narrative film with actors.
Right.
And and so some of the things that haven't, we really dug into sort of the history of what happened to the Brit. I mean, as you had mentioned, the case was heard twice. There was a couple, the Supreme Court justices whose family members were involved with Planned Parenthood, and there's a lot of conflicts of interest around. I don't want to get into obviously too much because I don't want to give away sort of things a lot of people were learned throughout the way. But there's an entire strategy built around getting Roe passed that had nothing to do with Roe or Wade. Interestingly enough, Roe versus Wade had literally nothing to do with Roe or Wade, which is also fascinating. A lot of people who see the movie, or a lot of people who know parts of the story, are disappointed by saying, I hope they show this about Jane Roe, and I say Jane Roe, her real name's Norma McCorvey for your listeners who don't know who Roe was. And people come to me who's really involved in the movie. Well, Nick, why are there's only like 2 scenes with Jane Roe in the whole movie? And what people don't realize is Jane Roe had nothing to do with the case. Essentially, we try to follow history. Right. They went out, they wanted to find a girl, they met her, they signed her up, and never spoke to her again. Mm-hmm. At least she didn't even find out the results of the case until she saw it in the media. And so we literally followed that timeline, and her story, it really had nothing really to do. The only part of her story that was interesting is they completely lied, manipulated, and used her to get what they wanted for the abortions, and that we show. But then, she wasn't really involved. And there was a 1989 movie just made for TV about this, but it was a Jane Roe, Norma McCorvey story again, which again had nothing to do with the court case.
Well, it's interesting. I obviously I've met Norma McCorvey. She's since passed. And it's the truth is, as you say, that she was manipulated and used by the pro-choice movement, and came to redact or tell basically that she everything she believed prior she didn't believe anymore. Did you get an opportunity to interview her or meet her before she passed away?
No, I was able to interview and speak to some of the people involved with her. So I'm blanking on his name, right? The gentleman who baptized Norma.
Flip Benham.
I was able to interview Flip. Norma was
Father Frank Pavone as well.
Frank was very involved in helping us with the film. So Frank and Alvida King, and it was very hard to get in touch with Norma. She was very sort of like, very difficult, and I think it was challenging during that time before she passed. So unfortunately, no, we didn't get to speak to Norma, and and we read all of her books and talked to people around who really knew her, and she was such a small part of the movie anyway.
Again, my guest is Nick Loeb. You can find out more by going to RoeVWadeMovie.com, and the movie comes out to the public on April 2nd, but you can pre-order by going to iTunes and Amazon, Google Play. Where else can they pick it up on April 2nd, Nick?
So this Friday, this weekend, Easter weekend, everybody, unfortunately with COVID, everyone was probably stuck at home with not much to do. Anybody who's got cable, satellite, it'll be on demand on every single cable and local cable and satellite provider in the country. If you prefer to stream it on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Vudu, pretty much everyone should be able to anybody with an iPhone, computer, or TV should be able to see the movie this weekend.
So Nick, as I was, kind of reading the summary of the movie, and of course seeing the movie, obviously most pro-lifers know the name Dr. Bernard Nathanson, but many do not know Dr. Mildred Jefferson. Talk about her, because I think that that part of the movie was very, very interesting.
Yeah, so Dr. Mildred Jefferson was the first African-American woman to graduate Harvard Medical School. And I think she was one of the first chief surgeon at Boston University. I could be off on the title, but And what I like to say, and I find really interesting about Mildred Jefferson, is that anytime an African American or a woman in this country either breaks the glass ceiling or breaks some sort of barriers, she is revered, talked about, statues, history in school. Everyone knows her name. Unfortunately, no one has ever heard of Dr. Mildred Jefferson. And I truly believe the reason of that is because she was the second president of the National Right to Life. She spent most of her life as a crusader for life, and that's what she was known for. And so I think if she was on the other side with Bella Abzug and Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem, marching for women's equality and abortion, she would, the media would have revered her. But because she's on the side of life, nobody talks about it. And it's sad, especially in a time today with Black Lives Matter, we should be, on women's rights issues, still in the forefront. I think that, anybody who has achieved such, goals and overcome should be talked about and revered. So this will be the first time, she'll be out there in film. And I think this is an amazing, and a lot of people are super excited. I know Stacey Dash was super excited to play her. Dr. Amelia King was overwhelmed and with emotion to be able to play her mother. And so I think this was an amazing opportunity to bring Mildred to life.
Nick Loeb's my guest. You can check out the movie at RoeVWadeMovie.com, and it's available pre-order right now, but it will be available to the public on April 2nd. That's Good Friday. So pick it up, watch it on iTunes or any other of the platforms that will be made available. Nick, I mentioned up front about the conspiracy theory, if you will, and you likened this to the JFK movie. I don't think a lot of people think that there was anything going on behind the scenes that might make it conspiratorial. If you would, without giving away too much of the movie, because I'm sure those are things you found out that maybe most people aren't aware of. Is there some conspiracy behind Roe versus Wade that we don't know about?
I think the conspiracy is essentially it was a whole group of people that sort of conspired to utilize the media, manipulate the media to get and completely lie to essentially push their agenda. And you'll see how they actually did that in the movie. None of it's made up. And a lot of the people who were involved in this actually came out and admitted it years later. And we specifically point out, articles that they planted, and people can go look those articles up. I mean, though, there was hundreds of articles. We list them in the movie by date, month, time, within the dialogue and the story. So this was extremely well orchestrated plan between Planned Parenthood and NARAL to push their agenda. And there are a lot of other cool conspiracy things that unfortunately we left out of the movie. And I'm hoping one day to do, a graphic novel to be able to include all these things, that I can use as a teaching tool alongside the movie to universities and high schools around the country, that I will have a lot more than just the movie. And then I'll give you one of the interesting facts for your listeners that you won't see in the movie just because the movie would have gone too long. So the Norma McCorvey Jane Roe had a lawyer. Her original lawyer was her adoption lawyer because she actually never had an abortion. She had several kids and gave them all up for adoption. So she had an adoption attorney. Her adoption attorney is essentially the person who connected Norma with Planned Parenthood to help her get this abortion. And she in NARAL, and he was really the only guy that was outside the circle of NARAL and Planned Parenthood to know that they completely lied, manipulated, and everything. So this adoption attorney, 6 months after Roe was assassinated, in the backwoods of Texas.
Never heard of that.
Yeah. And do you know who prosecuted his assassin?
No.
Henry Wade.
Wow.
So, it leaves some questions, like, and, you don't, it was a random assassin. There was no rhyme or reason for it. It wasn't, there was, and so it begs to ask the question, how, why, and also at the time, the lawyer for Norma was very powerful. She was part of the Texas government. She was part of the Texas House of Representatives at the time.
Mhm. Again, my guest is Nick Loeb. You can check out the movie Roe v. Wade, the movie at roeVWademovie.com. Nick, your own journey through this, I'm curious as to what you learned by producing the movie, not obviously about versus Wade, but just personally about abortion. Uh, Also, if you would talk about some of the actors. I mean, you've got John Voight, you've got others in the movie. If you would, what did you learn? What was the journey through creating and now producing and releasing this movie? And then tell us about some of the actors.
I think it was an incredible journey. I mean, I've never, although I've been in the film business for 25 years, I've never been part of a project from when I say beginning to end. When people think the beginning is you get a script and go make a movie. No, the beginning is when you take a pen and put it to paper. And so being involved in the process, literally from writing the first word to the end, was an incredible process, an incredible journey. We had a lot of great actors who were involved, as you had mentioned, John Boyd. But I grew up. I don't know how old you are. I'm 45, and I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, and so we had a lot of incredible seasoned actors who were all at one time were famous, during the careers, like John Schneider from Dukes of Hazzard or Superman, and you had Steve Guttenberg from Police Academy, or Robert Davi, or Joey Lawrence from Blossom, and Stacey Dash from Clueless, and Jamie Kennedy from Scream, and so having all of these extremely seasoned actors there, and especially when I was a little kid watching a lot of these guys on TV were my heroes. It was almost just like a surreal experience at times, being able to now direct these guys, and I think the journey was interesting. And I think with the audience also, there's a lot of misconception with a lot of the actors that are in the movie, and so people will see the movie and immediately say, oh my God, this is some faith-based Christian right pro-life movie. And yes,
Right.
do we have a lot of conservative actors in the movie? Sure, there's a couple. I can tell you most of them are not pro-life, and which is super interesting. And I think you can't judge a book by its cover. And I think there's well, if they're not pro-life, why did they do your movie? I said, to be honest, most of the actors in the movie weren't. I mean, none of the I would say half the conservatives in the movie were pro-life, and nobody else. And so I would say maybe 75% of the cast was pro-choice. Well, why would they do your movie? Because they're actors, and they're playing roles, and they're playing characters.
Right.
And I think that, I think they felt that it was a balanced portrayal of what happened. And I think they were excited to play historical. I mean, actors love being able to play historical figures and being able to, and I don't think Supreme Court justices have been portrayed in any movie. And so for these guys to play, these guys who are essentially legends of their time at some point and extremely famous people in history, these actors are super excited to get to, dig their teeth into those roles.
Well, not to, there's a stigma out there that, Christian movies, even though this isn't one of those really, are, not very well produced or acted, and, and they're not really well put together, sometimes kind of sappy. I didn't find Roe v. Wade, the movie, that way at all. I thought the acting was good. The filming was great. So I exhort people to go watch this movie. You can do it on Good Friday. It's available to the public, and you can do that by going to iTunes. It's also available by pre-order. And Nick, if you would tell everybody else where else they can get it. It's available all over the place. So
yeah, they can get on
just
Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Vudu. If you've got cable, it's on demand, whether it's Comcast, Verizon, AT&T. If you've got satellite, Dish Network, or DirecTV, it's on pay-per-view and on demand there. Essentially, any service you can have is on demand and available this weekend.
All right, folks. So you want to go do that, check it out. If you think you know everything about Roe versus Wade, you don't until you watch this movie, because you're going to learn some things that you didn't know prior. It's 48 years since the decision was handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court, but there's still a lot of things that Americans don't know about what happened. And I think you're going to find this movie very informative. As a pro-life activist, it's something we need to know about because we talk about this with a lot of folks out there, and there's a lot of confusion about the decision of Roe versus Wade and the inner workings that led to it. And a lot of those things we need to know as we're talking to people who are pro-choice out there. One other thing I found interesting in the movie, Nick, was the interplay between the pro-choice crowd and the pro-life groups. Uh, in the movie, you show that it looks like, anyway, that the pro-life groups were caught off guard. That's hard for me to imagine, actually. I mean, that here you have a U.S. Supreme Court decision that's about ready to be handed down. It's not like they didn't know this was going on, at least from my understanding. They basically heard the case twice. If you could explain what was going on between the pro-choice and pro-life crowd.
Yeah, I think people need to go back. People either who weren't around back then don't realize, or people who were around back then maybe forgot. There was no pro-life movement, number one. It just started, and just
Right.
started for this particular case, number one.
Mhm.
There weren't millions of people involved in this movement around the country. And the main reason why we're completely caught off guard, because the pro-lifers literally thought, and a lot of pro-choicers, I mean, even I would say a lot of liberal people, it was a very small group of people who wanted abortion. And it was co-opted with women, but everyone really thought there was no way this could potentially happen. Like, it was like,
Mhm.
it was like, yeah, okay, so sure, they're going to pass a law that I can just walk into a bar and shoot whoever I want. Like, it was that mentality. Like,
Yeah.
so they didn't take it seriously. They thought it was a joke, because they literally, it was like they believed no way could the government allow you to kill your baby. And so nobody took it seriously, because nobody, and also, I mean, you'll find out, I mean, most of the justices were Catholics. A lot of them are
That's right.
Catholics. And so, I mean, you'll have to see. And then, I mean, and the conservatives had the majority of the court also. So, the conservatives had the majority of the court. Even some of the liberals on the court were Catholics.
Yeah, could you share what happened between the first hearing and the second hearing? We got about a minute and a half left, because
Yeah,
I think
so,
that a lot of people don't even know there was a first
no,
hearing of the
so
case.
Roe v. Wade was heard twice, in 1971 and 1972. The decision came out in 73.
Right.
The first time it was heard, there was only 7 justices, and typically on the Supreme Court we have 9.
Right.
2 are just retired due to health issues, and the vote was very close on the first go around, and so some of the justices wanted it to be reheard. And I think there was some alternative motivations in wanting it to be reheard, because they just were. And so that's why it was heard again. Now, a lot happened
Between that
publicly
time.
between
Yeah.
both cases, which essentially pushed justices into different decision-making realms. And no different than you see, which is interesting. I think no different to today, how much influence the media has on our courts today, as you can see through the election process here in our country.
Right.
Nothing's really changed in 50 years.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Again, Nick Loeb is my guest today here on the Mark Harrington Show. And folks, you can find out more by going to markharrington.org. We're also streamed on all my social media platforms. You can pick our program up on all your popular podcasting platforms as well. And we're also available on American Family Radio. If you would, Nick, tell everybody where they can get the movie and watch the movie when it comes out on Good Friday.
Yeah, they can see the movie on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Vudu. I mean, anybody who's got satellite local cable, it'll be on demand this weekend. So when you're all sitting at home on Easter Sunday or Saturday before with bad weather out, if you're in the Northeast, it's a great time to watch the movie with your friends and family.
Again, my guest today has been Nick Loeb. He's the producer of the movie Roe versus Wade. He also plays Dr. Bernard Nathanson in the movie. And again, you can find out more by going to RoeVWadeMovie.com. Folks, I want you to take action. I want you to watch this movie, get a group of people together, watch it together, talk about it, share it with other people, because this is going to give you more information about that infamous decision of Roe versus Wade. You've been listening to Your Radio Activist. We'll see you next time. God bless you. God bless America. And remember, America, to bless God.
You've been listening to Mark Harrington, your radio activist. For more information on how to become a witness against the evil plague in America, call Created Equal at 614-269-7808. That's 614-269-7808. Or go online to createdequal.net. Createdequal.net. Be sure to tune to the Mark Harrington Show next time for your marching orders in the culture war.